Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. I'm really excited today. These are my first documentary film makers. So I've had filmmakers on, animators, Brandon Oldenburg's here. So I'm super excited to have these guys. It was actually a team of 4, but 2 of them are representing for the whole team today. And I'm really excited to have them. So Kevin Grazioli, like ravioli. Right. I was close. And Andrew has a little bit easier name, Andrew Quinn. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. And thank you guys for over in the chat. Feel free to tell us where you're coming in from. And I'm Diane Gibbs. If I didn't say that, I can't ever remember. So we're going to just jump right in and dig in. They have made a movie about letterpress. And I think most designers kind of love letterpress. If you love letterpress, over in the chat, let us know what you think, and if you're interested or you didn't know too much but now you want to know more. So because I think the film's actually doing some really cool things that's going around. So Andrew, can you kind of give us an idea, tell us about the background for the movie and where the idea to make a movie about letterpress printing began?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Andrew Quinn. I'm one of the co-founders of Bayonet Media. We're a production company in Indianapolis. We formed to kind of try and help our employees and ourselves make a living while being creatively fulfilled. We do a lot of client work, but we were looking to make a feature-length documentary. We saw a lot of stuff that was on Netflix, places like that, streaming services that we felt like, well, that was pretty good. Didn't look that great. We feel like our stuff is like could contend with that. So we started looking, kind of keeping our eyes peeled for some kind of subject that would work as a feature-length documentary. And then my co-founder, Joe Vella, his sister is friends with Erin Beckloff, who is a professor at the University of Miami in Ohio, where she teaches letterpress. And she's like one of the new people to letterpress. She did an internship at Hat Show Print and was like quickly accepted into the community, the letterpress community here in the Midwest that kind of stretches out to the coast even. And she was doing a lot of learning with these elderly guys, teaching them in their basements, their garages, that kind of thing. And she realized, well, these guys have a lot of information, a lot of it that's not like published in books or captured in any way. So she started recording audio interviews with these guys, but felt like it had such a strong legacy that it needed to be recorded in a better, maybe more professional way. So her sister, or Joe's sister, connected us with her. She came in and kind of told us a little bit about it, and then we were kind of instantly hooked. We didn't know a lot about letterpress at the time. We'd done a little short about a printer here in Indianapolis, but it was just like this natural, like, of course, we're looking for a subject matter. You really seem to know what you're talking about and would be a great kind of liaison to get us into the community, and we started from there.
So you're always looking for, stuff, or it's something that you were specifically at this time, so it was just serendipity that it happened?
Yeah, so we had all 3 of us had made some documentaries for Kevin, Joe, and I had made some documentaries for PBS while we were still in school. So we are just as filmmakers or observers, I guess. Documentary filmmakers are definitely like observant type people. You're always kind of looking for something. Could we turn that into a video? We're very visual people, not so much like written. So we hadn't written any like short films. We've done some music videos, but we were always on the lookout for subject matter. Yeah. And when you see letterpress machinery, it's pretty obvious that like this equipment would look good on camera. It moves, it looks different. It's I don't know, like it's almost foreign, to people today to see all this mechanical stuff in action. So we knew that like, you could point a camera at that, it would look good, but you also need some substance to tell a story. Right. And so as we started to meet some of these older guys here in town in Indianapolis that had big collections of this stuff, it was becoming apparent, well, there's a story here. There's people that we could focus on.
Right. All right. So Kevin, you're one of the producers, and then Andrew, real quick, you said something about you had produced a short. So what's the difference between a short and then this documentary film length? Because it's a more of a feature film length. Pressing On is, right?
Right. So our final runtime was a little more than an hour and a half. An hour and 20 minutes is pretty much feature length. Sometimes maybe 80 minutes is feature length, which is, I guess, the same. But for most purposes, less than that would be a short. Or broadcast feature length, like if you saw a short special that was like 45 minutes on like History Channel, you might be able to consider that feature length. So we hadn't done anything that long. So the difference, mostly there was runtime, but then we find out that doing a feature took 3 years, whereas a short might take, like our client projects, a commercial, a 30-second TV ad, that's about a month from like signed contract to deliver and upload to the stations.
Yeah, film that in like one day,
Right. The whole process of it was definitely way more labor intensive than creating something short.
So they're doing screen printing right next door, so that's what the pressure washer sounds. So sorry about that. I can't control when they do that. But hopefully you can't hear it too bad.
I didn't hear it actually.
Oh, terrific. Okay.
At least not over the sound of my own voice.
All right. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, I think for us, there always was this goal of we want to bring a feature-length story to the screen. We want to figure out, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later, but what some of those challenges are. And, you look at it and approach it totally differently in terms of telling a story and how are you arcing things and laying it out and, piecing it all together. And, that's where Andrew really kind of comes together and weaves that story throughout the whole piece. But, the challenge of a feature from the first day was really exciting to us. And so that's kind of why we gravitated towards that, I mean, you could go on Vimeo and find a 2-3 minute beautiful letterpress video. But we wanted to really take this opportunity to dive in depthly to this community, to really explore. And, we felt that the best way to do that was a feature.
Yeah. So one of the questions so this started as a Kickstarter, I think, and then you guys got it funded, and then it's kind of blown up and done a lot of things. But you must have shot a ton more footage than what is in the piece, because some of the clips, so I got a link and you let me watch it and it was great. I'm so glad I got to see it. It was fantastic. I can't wait. I know Abby in the middle of the country. I can't think. She's already told us where she was. I can't. Kansas City, Missouri. Let's make sure we got that clear. So, but so Abby is really excited. And she's hoping that it'll be in a city near her. And so, but I was really thankful that I was able to watch it. But then I'm seeing all these clips that I'm doing for these promos that you guys send me a bunch of clips out, and I'm like, this didn't even make the cut. This didn't make the cut. This didn't make the cut. And I was like, there's so much more. So how much were you filming? How much footage time did you film? And then you got it down to an hour and 40 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, so I mean, that was a whole process in and of itself. I might try and use the screen share thing here, see if this works, because I've got the like project file, pulled up here. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see like this media folder, and then let me, if I get the info on it, it's 17.8 terabytes. So that's all the assets of the thing.
Wow.
And then if you go down into production, it's going over the server. Like these are all of the different shoots that we had. Some of these are interviews, other things. An interview in itself. Let's see, like Jim Daggs. He's a pretty big interview throughout the thing. 7 cards. Well, that's pulling up. But I mean, what did we do, Kevin? 19 interviews?
It was 19 or 20 total interviews across, we went across the Midwest, probably like 5 to 7 different states. And I mean, so when you think of some of the challenges with that, you have all this data. Where's it going to go? I mean, I feel like a lot of times we're used to dealing with files that are 10, maybe 20 megabytes in terms of like, Adobe Illustrator or, some type of graphic design, more print geared document. But, you know, as soon as you start capturing all that footage, it adds up. And so I think we had quite a few meetings about planning on where all this data is going to go and how we're going to back it up. And it ended up being this massive hard drive thing. I think it's like 48, 50 terabytes, you know, big, just to fit it all in.
Right.
But, you know, in layman's terms, like, I think that equates to, I mean, how many hours do you think of footage, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because we did 19 interviews, and each interview was probably an hour and a half long, you know, so just in interviews, there's probably more than like 25 hours worth of content there. And then, you know, we're incorporating like historic films and that kind of thing. So part of our process with all that, and that was kind of the writing phase. You would do all these interviews, and somebody would give you like a new nugget of information that you then had to go pursue and look a little more into. I'm trying to pull up like our Google Docs stuff here. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing while you're pulling that up. I mean, so we ended up shooting this entire film with a red cinema camera. So that's the camera that they're using on, I mean, major motion pictures. And we shot it at 5K resolution. You know, that way it holds up. And so we've mastered it all at 4K. And so working through that process, I mean, it just eats up your data. In addition, shooting it in RAW, and maybe this is just for like the one or two people that care about this technical stuff in the chat, but shooting it in RAW is basically like shooting a still photography like you with your DSLR in RAW versus JPEG. It allows you to have a lot more control in terms of the color and the final look at the end of the process. And I think that's part of the reason why the film looks so good. But again, lots of data, lots of management.
So it looked like you guys had a drone in some of the shots. So I'm like, really want to have a DJI Mavic Pro. It's my goal sometime this year to get one of those. So were you shooting with a drone, or was somebody just in a hot air balloon or something?
We did shoot with a drone, which was kind of a stressful day. One of our guys, Freddie, who's on staff here at Bayonet, in the film, he was also like our everything audio. I mean, we were a small crew, so everybody was doing a little bit of everything. But he actually built his own drone that could carry the red. Wow. And then on set, we kind of were like we don't want to use our primary camera and put it up in the air and crash it or anything. So we shot on a GH4. But he also has a couple of other like prosumer type drones.
What's cool about drones, I mean, the drone that he built will it takes up the entire back of my Ford Explorer. If you were to, I don't even think it would fit. I think you have to rent a van. It's so big and so massive because it holds that cinema camera.
And it's 8 propellers, right?
It's 8 propellers. But Freddie, who works here, he's all FAA licensed, and he has taken basically the same test. So to do drones commercially, you have to go through the FAA, and you take the same test that actual pilots take.
Yep.
And so he's fully licensed and all of that, and we can fly, commercially with this thing rather than some of the, you see the smaller ones now that you can just send up and that kind of stuff. So
commercially,
it was really,
so like gerbils and stuff are going to get start getting tickets and.
But it was cool to be able to utilize that technology. Especially, I think at the beginning of the film, 3 years ago when we started this project, none of us had ever used a drone. We had never filmed with it. I don't even think Freddie had started building his yet. And so to be able to be in production when that became available to us, I mean, it just kind of shows how fast things are changing, unlike Letterpress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a whole like story aspect of it too. So, I mean, one of our goals with the documentary is like Letterpress is, the things that you produce with it are flat. It's images, and aside from showing the machines, the artwork is kind of flat, and it has like a historic tendency with what we're talking about. I mean, we talk about the Gutenberg Bible in the film, and we talk about how type is made and that kind of thing, and its impact on society. But we wanted something that was a little more universal, like the story that we were telling. We didn't want to strictly be technical, where if you were a letterpress nerd, you totally enjoy it. But if you are a letterpress nerd who like brought your nephew to see it, he'd be like totally bored. So one of the things we talked about was like, it would be really cool because we heard about people moving presses and how that is like a huge undertaking. So we were like, well, let's try and find somebody who is moving a press. And then we could get that drone shot of like driving into the sunset, right, with this press on the trailer. And we were looking, and people were reaching out to us, and then it turned out that Tammy and Adam were buying another press, they're pretty major characters in the film, which actually, like, we had filmed some stuff with them, stuff that you see at the farmer's market, and some stuff in their home. And then when we went back to film this press being moved, it ended up becoming a big portion of the story, and it helped add a lot of human element to it. So it's like this thing that started as a technical, well, we have access to this drone, and it wouldn't it be nice to make our documentary a little more engaging by having some drone footage, actually turned into some of the most, I think, like, human and identifiable, like, storylines within the film.
Yeah, it was really nice. So, all right, so now we're going to go to question 2, which is, Kevin, you are one of the producers. What's your role as a producer? And then how many people worked on the film? And then what were their roles? Like, what was Andrew's role?
Cool. Awesome. So I am Kevin. I am one of our producers. Andrew, who already introduced himself, he's one of our directors, him and Aaron Beckloff. Andrew was also our lead editor for the whole project and overall kind of creative vision and direction that we were going to go. So, I mean, what does a producer do? That's kind of what you're asking, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But basically, the producer is responsible for starting the project, trying to identify and find funds for the project, seeing it all the way through production. So where are we? What are we shooting? How are we going to do this? And kind of controlling some of the budget through that whole process. Okay, well, we can't go out, to Alaska to shoot this film. We have to do it, locally here in the Midwest. Through all the way through post and getting it into distribution and, making sure that whole timeline is responsible. So I guess if there's like one person to help see it all the way through and to kind of be the organizational voice of it all, I suppose that's me. But when we talk about like people that worked on the film, we really had a core group of 5 to 6 people that were on set with us most of the time. Sometimes it was even smaller than that. And so, that's a lot of times where myself and Andrew, maybe on a bigger commercial shoot that we do, we're not necessarily moving around stands and we're not getting into the nitty gritty, but, this really was a team effort from all of us. I mean, there were countless times where, we'll move stuff, we'll, go run to get whatever, and, just kind of take care of all of that really as a team. And then when we brought it back to post, I think there was probably maybe 10 to 12 people total that touched it, from, our composer to our graphic designer to the person doing the After Effects work in some of it, and to the historical archive stuff. So, I mean, really, on a whole major feature-length film, this is a very small number, but we're able to kind of have that hands-on approach to get it done.
That's cool. Okay, so you had 2 directors, I guess, right? So Andrew's the main one, and then Erin, because she had the history with it. She didn't have a history being a director, right?
Right.
Yeah. So maybe we could back up a little bit. The whole project started with Erin wanting to archive these older gentlemen that Andrew had mentioned earlier. We were afraid that as they get older, this knowledge base is going to be lost to time. And these ancient processes, people forgot how to make glass back in the, I don't know what century it was, but some old century, and they had to relearn it. And so there was this, fear that all this knowledge would be lost. And so Aaron initially wanted to capture it, with a, like audio recordings or just an iPhone or something, just to have it and preserve it. And that's kind of where we came in. She necessarily hasn't done, like you said, this kind of stuff. We have, but she's done letterpress and we haven't done that. And so it turned out to be this just perfect harmony where we could come together, collaborate, and kind of figure out what this story is, each bringing talents to it, but each also building each other up and making the end goal, I think, a lot better.
So, all right. So that gives me a good kind of idea of where to go next and understand what people's role are. But then you also had, I know you mentioned you had somebody doing the sound, because there's beautiful, as all good movies do, they have the track that goes along with it that sets the tone and the mood, and that you don't even really notice, but you would probably notice it more if it wasn't there. But it's also, you do get to hear the machines a little bit. I mean, there is somebody was saying, or it could be that I've watched so many videos this past week on Letterpress, just preparing. One guy I was watching, I think, was saying, there's just such a great sound. These are foot fed, these are foot driven. And it's just, you know, it's kind of like this sort of train sort of sound. You know, it's not maybe that loud, but it's definitely louder than, you know, quiet. So
yeah. So I guess going off of that, I mean, there was a scene in the film where we're talking all about the machinery and how it's been built to last and all of that. And we were working with the composer. Our composer is named Mark Greenberg, and he's actually like the studio manager and like one of the studio musicians for Wilco. So his office is like their recording studio, the Loft in Chicago, which is cool because he had access to all of their instruments and that kind of thing. And he could, I think, afforded him the opportunity to take on the project because his like day job is working for Wilco. So there was a scene where we're talking about this machinery and everything, and we have this really nice track in there. But he and I kind of both decided, well, let's just let the music, let's take the music out and just let the machinery provide the score for this section. And then that kind of puts it into Freddie, the sound guy, sound engineer, sound designer's hands, and the editing team to kind of beef that up, because it wasn't like Mark took the sound stuff and put it into a keyboard and actually played them as instruments or anything, which could be cool. But it was just putting all that stuff in there. I mean, there's like machines that are like pneumatic, so you got these air compressor type sounds, and then mechanical stuff, and the monotype keyboard dings when they play it. So we were able to like build out a rhythm of like, in the footage you see people typing on the line of the typecasting machines, that kind of stuff. This is a image of Freddie doing some sound mixing for the film.
And you'll see in the middle that Freddie's he's doing some Foley in addition to the mixing. So he's recreating some of the sounds that, you know, we necessarily couldn't capture on scene with the actual, you know, that's a chase, and you have all the components to do a print for letterpress just right there and kind of recreating that.
So Brandon asked a question: analog versus digital, who wins?
I mean, that's a pretty big conversation that we have in the film. It was something that we talk. I feel like the film tries to make a case that analog is better. I'd say in terms of filmmaking, it's not. I enjoy analog filmmaking. I've actually got this like VHS camera here on my desk for a certain aesthetic or whatever, but filmmaking wise, we couldn't have done everything that we were doing on film. You couldn't shoot a documentary in hours and hours and hours and just keep recording on film. It'd just be way too expensive. But in terms of print, I mean, I think the impact that it's had on the lives of the people that we filmed, like they made a strong case for analog being better, and it's all rooted in that the tangible aspect. I think you know, today everything is on a computer. We do everything stare into a screen all the time, and then we have to buy like a fidget spinner to like keep our hands busy. I don't know what's going on there. It seems kind of weird, but it's like I mean, I would say that analog is superior in some ways.
Just depends on what we're doing. I have another question from anonymous attendee. They asked, what was your, and this is a safe place, it's anonymous attendee. You can actually use your first name. We will not, it's not, nothing weird happens. So what was your favorite moment while filming? Any one person, process, place, piece stand out above the rest? It's a great question.
There were a lot of really good moments. That's why I'm struggling to think about something here.
I would say like a person, there was a guy, Jim Daggs, who we filmed, and he's in the trailer. He's also in the movie. At the very beginning, we do like a reenactment of him telling the story of when he was a kid, first coming across Letterpress. And the thing that I thought was really cool about Jim Daggs is like he started it like as a preteen essentially, and he's still doing it today, and he's like in his late 60s. He has a modern print shop in Ackley, Iowa, but then in back it's like a warehouse that he basically, whereas like a lot of the characters like collected a bunch of letterpress stuff and they have tons and tons of stuff, and they could like, you ask them, you know, do you have some crazy font from Victorian font from whenever, and they could sift through their stuff and find it or give them a couple days. This guy's thing was that he had like a functioning letterpress shop. You could put a crew of like 10 people in there and you could produce a daily newspaper. Like he had all the equipment to do that, and it was all well maintained and organized, and like just totally functional, which I thought was like that was really cool. We did a lot of the reenactments in his shop because it was like stepping back into time, going in there.
Right.
And then he just had a cool side thing. He was the mayor of the town that he lived in. He had been run unopposed for 10 years.
Oh, that's great. He could print all his own signage too, because he wiped out the competition for sure.
Exactly.
So that was that little piece that's on your desk, Andrew. It says paper is easier replace than fingers. That was him, right? And he talks about that in one of the little tidbits that I shared that you guys had shared with me as a teaser, kind of.
Yeah, and it's backwards, but
it's not for us. We see it correctly.
Oh, okay, cool. So this was something that he had hanging in his shop, and we actually did a little segment with him where he goes through and talks about, well, I lost this finger in this machine, and this one went around the chain in a sprocket. And that was, I don't know, something about that was really cool to me, like this idea of the craftsman. You could kind of, and again, this guy's dedicated his whole life to it, to the point that like he's missing appendages from it.
Right. So I'm going to go back to an earlier question. Oh, Kevin, did you have your favorite part?
Oh, I do, and I have a screen share prepared. Which I'm really
terrific.
You got to use the screen share.
Amen.
So I think one of my favorite moments, so we're filming with Paul Aiken, and he's about an hour north of Chicago and runs the Platen Press Museum. And he probably has 300 to 400 presses in this small, and it's very small, warehouse. But so we wrap filming with him. We're just kind of hanging out, shooting the breeze, and we're asking him about his casting machines. Because a lot of letterpress printers, especially these older gentlemen, also cast. And so they'll cast with this pure lead. And so we're like, what's that machine over there? That looks cool. He's like, that's a Ludlow. And so he goes over and he flips it on. He's like, you guys want to cast some type? I'm like, yes. Is it dangerous? It's hot lead. He's like, nah, don't worry about it. So he shows us how to use this machine, and it's probably the size of a small Buick. And so you go over and you put in your font or your type and your molds. You line them up, all the letters that you want. And you put it in the machine and you pull this massive lever. And then he's like, when you pull that, stand back. And he kind of like scooches back a little bit. He's like, sometimes it just squirts hot lead everywhere. And so he casts the first one, shows us how to do it. He's like, okay, I gotta go. You guys feel free to use it as much as you want. And so we obviously had to stick around for a little bit while we cleaned up, right? And we had to cast our company here, Bayonet Media.
Oh, so, cool.
Yeah, it turned out pretty cool. Can you guys see that? And so that is you could actually print with that right now if you wanted to. And so don't eat it. It is lead, but yeah.
So so this is one question I had. So I had not ever seen that machine. Clearly I knew it existed because there's type. And so what he's doing is he's making type for people, and people are able, but it looked like he would set something and then just dump it back in to get bubbled up and make new type for the next thing. Or was he putting that back in, and having a drawer that was just for that?
So go ahead.
There's a lot of different, it's all called typecasting, but that was, so the first machine was, the one we filmed was the Intertype, but the famous one is the Linotype, which there's actually a whole nother documentary out there called Linotype, the film. And that was somebody called it, Mark Twain called it the eighth wonder of the world or something like that. And it's fascinating to watch that machine work. It's so huge that they had to sit in these little chairs because that's where the keyboard had to be so that the thing could fit through a doorway. But it is it's casting type, it's mechanical, you type into it, and it's got a little pot that it keeps hot, and it's casting lead type as you go. And then they would type out a whole article for a newspaper, print it, and then just melt it down and use it again. And then they had a little story that guys would keep their coffee or their lunch warm on the little pot that was there. And you see that in the film where Jim Daggs went in the section where he's talking about his fingers and all that. He's tending to that little pot and pouring stuff in there.
By reusing, you could almost say letterpress printers were the first green movement to happen.
Absolutely. And some were foot fed, right? There were many that are just handheld or hand powered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I still am interested in going back a little bit further and saying, so coming up with the idea. So I know Aaron had the idea. You guys met through Joe's sister or whatever. There was a family connection somehow, right? So then what was it that gets you to be like, ooh, this is an itch? So did you do research prior to say, hey, you know what, I think there's this big movement? Or did you just trust blindly and be like, yeah, we're going to put all our eggs in this basket with Aaron? Like, there must be something that you have to kind of go through, because making this is a lot of time, it's a lot of money, and then you're putting a lot kind of on the line. So, and I kind of want to know where the Kickstarter came in. Was this before you had committed, after you had committed, kind of just so that people get an idea of the process?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I think I probably can speak for both me and Andrew and the rest of our team. The first time we saw an actual press printing, it was just this eye-opening moment for us. I mean, to actually see something, to put the paper on, roll it across, or every press is a little different with its mechanical movements, and to not really know what you're printing, because when you look at it, it's all reversed, and then to pull that piece of paper up and to see that finished print. I mean, there's this call, I think, that our generation has back to the physical. We stare at a computer screen. We're staring at one right now all day long, and we want to go home and we want to figure out how something's made. People want to get into woodworking. People want to work on motorcycles. There's all kinds of stuff, and so that's that call. And so, yeah, I think really the first time we saw it, I think you'd probably agree, maybe, Andrew, we're like, there's something here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like a piece of machinery that you put an abstract idea into and it spits out art. Like, that just seems really cool to me. And I think we weren't going to do a documentary on, like, I don't know, people who make like yo-yos or something, because it was just like, there's a lot of layers to it. There's communication, etc. But it's also like the craft and hands-on movement is growing. So we figured, would be an audience, again, talking about Netflix, like you have to, as a filmmaker, you have to make something. You don't have to, but it's a good idea if you want to keep making films, to make something that people will watch. And people are in tune with that. You've got shows like Dirty Jobs, shows like How It's Made, and then just like a craft movement of, like, people are obsessed with all of this, like, where did your coffee come from and how was it made and how was it grown and everything. Or like, I don't know, I feel like wood and leather, all that kind of stuff is in vogue right now. And this just totally feeds into that. I think audiences just have an appetite for this kind of story.
Yeah. So going back to your question, the Kickstarter. And so we realized early on that, this probably isn't a film that we could convince a studio or, someone to fund. That really, I mean, Letterpress has this grassroots movement and the maker movement in general to it. And so we wanted to embrace that. And so that's kind of why we chose to go the Kickstarter route is, one, we have this massive community that we can tap into, from designers to art directors to hobbyists to letterpress printers to, makers. And everyone we told about it, hey, we're thinking about doing this. I mean, they just got so excited. And so we knew that we had this natural built-in audience just kind of waiting. There hadn't been a feature film made about letterpress printing, so we kind of knew that we were onto something there. So I think really Kickstarter has like two purposes, and one is to, obviously raise some funds to help your production. But there's another whole element where it's building this community around this common goal. We were very fortunate. A lot of the printers in the film and a lot of the letterpress community came together to help donate awesome prints and rewards, for our backers. And, so it really worked out perfect, we think, for this film. And so I'd highly recommend doing it, especially if you're trying to kind of reach out and build more of an audience.
So what was the timeline? So when did you do the Kickstarter, and then you're releasing, it comes out like, if, like, I've been in a hole, clearly, and I don't know if the Kickstarter was in this year. If it was, then I really was in a hole. But if it wasn't, then I don't know. I just somehow missed it. But I bought it. I'm a believer. There's my there's my press on poster.
Yeah, we gotta.
I'll try to stand to the side. And there's all kinds of things that just as a person I can buy even after the Kickstarter, which we'll share all those in just it's shop.letterpressfilm.com. just in case anybody's listening and has to go and get it right now. But
we'll give you a coupon code at the end.
Okay, great. So, but what was the time frame? When was the, like, had you shot some stuff and then you did the Kickstarter? Because one of the things with Kickstarter is having that video that's amazing, really does help.
Yeah, so the video is critical to a Kickstarter. I mean, you have to be able to show off that, you know, you can do this, but you also have to explain what are you going to do and how are you going to do this? How are you going to pull it off? So I believe we started the project about January 1st, 2015. Was the initial conversation. And so that February, we started talking seriously and saying, how can we do this? And that's about the same time that we decided to shoot this video for the Kickstarter. We wanted to explain it. And I think if you go to the updates tab all the way down, it'll say this is when you first started. So we launched a Kickstarter sometime late April. Yeah,
April 23rd.
April 23rd, 2015. So the Kickstarter ran, I believe, for 30 days. And then after that, we kind of jumped head first. That summer, we did a lot of research leading up to kind of late summer and the fall when we started our first round of filming. And so that first round of filming, we drove across the Midwest. We visited a lot of shops, a lot of basements, and we kind of brought all that footage back to our offices and just started digesting some of it, figuring out, where is this story? Where is it going? And, Andrew kind of led a lot of the efforts in that. So following that, in addition to this whole time, we're doing client work. We have to pay the bills. A documentary is great, but it doesn't necessarily pay the bills. And so we're doing ad agency stuff, commercials. But anyway, so we brought it all back, started to figure out the story, and we realized we got to go shoot some more stuff. We have to continue the story a little bit. We got to fill in here. And, I think it was interesting. As we went through production, we started to kind of ask targeted questions as the story started to develop more. I think the first couple of interviews were very broad. As we kind of tried to learn as much as we can and just gather that knowledge. But once the story was more established, we could really direct and we could figure out, okay, we need to make sure we go back to Iowa and we need to talk to Tammy and Adam about such and such at the Red Door Press. So we did all that. By the end of that year, or the next year, we had pretty much a working cut. And we were doing some test screenings here locally in Indianapolis, kind of to gather feedback. So then we went through the entire post process where that's sound, that's color, and we can kind of talk about that if anyone wants to. From there, we entered into a bunch of film festivals and started our kind of marketing efforts a little bit. But, the film festival timeline is you submit in, say, September or October, and you have to wait till February to hear back. So we had entered a lot of festivals, and unfortunately, we didn't get into any of the major ones. And that's okay. We know a lot of films that didn't and went down the same kind of self-distribution path and are just wildly successful. A great one to come to mind is Indie Game, the film. They just kind of said no film festivals or whatever. And, a little bit of that I think we can attribute to the climate. Ours isn't necessarily an edgy, civil documentary in the middle of, some third world country. Right. It's just happy-go-lucky feeling about Letterpress. And so now we've kind of taken that and we are currently screening the film. We had our premiere Hat Show print a couple weeks ago here. And now we're screening the film. And then this fall we'll have the digital release. So that'll be on iTunes and streaming. And, we're hoping for Netflix eventually after that.
Cool. So Abby had a question. Are any of you hoping to get into letterpress or printmaking after having filmed this? Did you get to play around with anything while filming? And you said you got to make some type, which was pretty cool. And I know Andrew, you like to build or rebuild motorcycles. So did this kind of scratch an itch for you? Is this something that you will maybe look into? I mean, it's kind of an investment money-wise, right?
Yeah. So one thing I like about my job in filmmaking is you get to and especially with documentary, you get to dive into other people's lives and everything. And I'm kind of like a serial hobbyist. I have a lot of interests, and getting to dive into this world and experience it all was really great. I think at the very beginning, I would have been interested in owning a press and everything. But as we went on, seeing some of these guys, so Dave Pete, he's one of the main characters in the film, and somebody he's here in Indianapolis, so he's in a lot of our bonus material, that kind of thing. when we filmed in his basement, he had to take a year to clean it out before we could film there. And it had been something like 15 years since he printed in there because he had so much stuff. And so like I have 5 motorcycles and they're in like various states of completion. I have a couple that I can just get on and ride at any time. But it's like, to me, it became almost a cautionary tale that like your hobby can almost get in the way of itself, you know? So to me, to have all that stuff, to move it all around, that my 3 years of making a film, I feel pretty good about it, and it can just go out there into the world, and that could be it for me.
Right.
Because before you know it, you've got, you can't, like I said, I can't ride a motorcycle because it's not running, and I got to fix it and organize all the parts and get it out of the way to get to the one that is running, and it just ends up becoming like you can't do anything. And even like Dave Churchman, like his wife was ill, like they probably should move into a smaller house, but they couldn't because he just had so much stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think it's give and take. Like if we had a tabletop press and printed some things, but also now we have tons of friends and you could just go over to their place and print stuff if they wanted to.
Right. You could scratch that itch with them, right, if you absolutely needed to. So
for sure.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about Kevin. Were you aware before of, I mean, I think you kind of talked about, or Andrew has talked about, that there was this craftsmanship movement kind of, and getting more in tune with doing things with your hands. But this more, were you more aware of this subculture within printmaking, I guess, and design? And what kind of morsels are in the movie that you can tell us about or tease us with a little bit? I know that didn't answer.
No. So I personally had no idea that this existed. It's kind of funny looking back to my childhood. My parents had a California typecase on the wall in our kitchen, and they just had little knickknacks and, you know, all kinds of stuff. I had no idea. I thought it was a cool shelf. But in there, they had a G, and it was, you know, maybe about an inch by an inch, because my last name's Grazioli. And so as a kid, I always thought this like metal G was really cool. Only now, 30 years later, did I realize that that's a piece of type. And that, you know, why is it there? It should be being used. Someone should be printing with that. You know, it's a shame that it's still in my parents' kitchen. So I really wasn't aware. And I think that's the thing that fascinates us the most about documentary filmmaking, is that you get to dive into these subcultures. You know, one day you could be on top of a mountain learning from astronomers, and the next day you could be learning all about letterpress. And you get to dive so deep into something without necessarily making it your day job. And so, but it is our day job. So it makes it really interesting for us. And so we're always on this constant path of discovery, fact finding. You know, in the movie, I think you'll find a lot of really great stuff. I don't really know how to tease it here, but there is something for everyone, whether you're a collector, whether you're just a hobby printer, whether you want to know more about letterpress. The one thing I will tease, I guess, if you're a current graphic designer, or let's say you're working at an ad agency, or you're an art director, or you're kind of going down that path, you've just graduated from a graphic design program, you know, you've heard a lot of terms, kerning, leading, you know, what is that? It's a term that's in all of our software programs. It's in Photoshop, it's in Illustrator. And so we really wanted to kind of figure it out. What is that? And so I really think if you're a graphic designer, like that little section will definitely appeal to you.
Gotcha.
So check it out.
Okay. So what were some of the things that didn't make the director line, right? Andrew cut them out, but they were still great morsels, I guess.
I mean, there's a lot of like interesting stuff about some of these individual guys. Like I said, the one guy was the mayor of the town. Dave Pete, the guy who had the collection that he couldn't even like use his stuff, he helped patent the 3-coin slot on a payphone for Westinghouse. Like he owns that patent. And he had this great story of how Westinghouse went out of business, and he called to see if he could get a copy of that patent to like frame and put on his wall. And they're like, no, like our policy is to destroy all that stuff. And then they called him back like an hour later and they're like, you know what, that exact patent is on my desk right now. I'm just going to send it to you. So like there was a lot of cool stories about that kind of thing. These guys are totally fascinating, but it's just like, again, like if you're watching this documentary you drag your mother to see it, you may not be able to go down that rabbit hole, or you like lose people's they would lose interest in it. There was a lot of stuff about, there's a section in there about trade and trade school and blue collar worker. Like I kind of would have liked to go on a whole tangent about the value of trade degrees and why are we like putting a stigma on that, but that's like a whole nother documentary in and of itself. There's a whole thing about photopolymer that we didn't get into, but there is a deleted scene on the DVD that kind of shows that process. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of interesting stuff and avenues. Again, you just like, you can't spend too much time on any one thing, or you might lose people's lose interest with the audience. And then one thing I want to talk about, kind of the tease thing you're talking about. There's a section in the film, this guy Rich Hopkins, who he has the molds or matrices, they call them, that cast the type that printed the Declaration of Independence. And the fact that like this piece of equipment that printed the like arguably most important document in American history is just in this guy's basement, I thought was really cool. But he understands the relevancy. He talks a lot about the film of how like the desktop printer became available and put some of his shop out of business. He had a $100,000 machine that got replaced by a PC that cost like $6,000. So what's kind of cool is like we have that scene, he kind of feels a little curmudgeonly and like hopeless, but then you see later where he's taken a MacBook, it's an older MacBook, but he's taken this MacBook and connected it to a typecasting machine. That thing I was describing earlier, that like cast metal type.
Cool.
Yeah,
that was cool.
It's like some guy in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia, has like designed this system of pneumatic tubes to hook like a USB port up to a thing from the 1900s, or it's like late 1800s that thing was designed and manufactured. And he could type everything in and press go, and then it casts it. Like it was completely amazing. And then it's just like some guy invented this thing in his basement. It really gave me a lot of respect for these guys, because you kind of, in this craft thing, or talking about, media and the portrayal of like dirty jobs, you might think like, okay, this guy, my father's a machinist. Okay, he knows how to use a machine, but like he didn't go to college. Well, these guys could probably like recite Shakespeare to you because they printed it, and invent and build a thing that hooks a laptop up to this old machine. It was pretty incredible. And there's a lot of little stories and things where we're examining these guys and trying to give them a platform in the film to talk about how they spent their life's work.
Right. So, Andrew, this is a question for you. So you have this kind of overarching theme that goes through, and then you're doing most of the editing. So you're really deciding what stays and what goes, and then that you have this team that you are kind of accountable to, that you're going to have to show, and then maybe they're like, well, why did you cut that out? And you're like, well, this is why. And so just remind us again what the overarching theme was, and then what were some things that maybe Kevin or Aaron was like, hey, why did you cut that out? Like that part. And then you have to kind of sell it to them as to why it wasn't part of that storyline. If it was about him being mayor, or even though those were interesting, you're kind of having to be the writer in a way of something that you didn't write, right?
Yeah. It's hard to answer that kind of directly, but I could kind of take you through the process of like what we did with all of that. I would say that mostly it's the opposite, that I would have stuff too long and they're like, this is boring, you need to cut it out. Yeah. And we would show it to like our DP, and he's a pretty like
what's DP mean?
A director of photography. Oh. Joe. So that's Joe. He's one of the co-producers. He was the director of photography. And I guess I would say he's not easily entertained. Maybe that's a nice way of putting it. So, you could show it to him, and it was like, if Joe thinks it's boring, the kind of regular Joe at the theater might also think that this is boring. So there was a lot of like slimming things down and focusing your attention on things.
The first cut was 4 hours long.
Yeah. And we sat down and watched that like scene by scene over a couple of days with all of our staff. But it was, I mean, so you would watch a scene and you would say, what are you picking up on in this and what's resonating? And then I think an editor, I mean, cutting it down is part of your job, but it's also like, what can we kind of subtextually let show through or make it implied, to kind of, and let the audience kind of draw out their own, you know, be vague enough to let the audience draw out what they want to see in it.
Right.
But then, I mean, some of it is just like totally like ditch digging. I mean, there's a section in the film that's all historic footage. That's just 1 minute where they're talking about there's this transition from letterpress to offset, and we have all this historic footage. And Mark created this track that was kind of reminiscent of the old Powerhouse track that you hear in like Looney Tunes when you see a factory in the Looney Tunes thing. So we intentionally like took all of this stuff with these early computers and kind of cut it up next to this song that kind of put a little satire spin on it that was kind of saying, well, society was really quick to adapt all this stuff. And these guys who spent 20 years learning how to do it, it was all, everything they knew was, the guy says it's all, it's all locked up on a little box now called a computer, and a lot of jobs are going that way, that same way. So I was trying to, through the editing, kind of like, well, here is this really fast, like head spinning point in time where basically all these guys got put out of business by something that feels almost comedic now. When you see the guys like, I'll now send it over to the video display screen by pressing return on this terminal. And it's like, it seems comedic now. And I think at the time to those guys, they were sitting back like, well, what's this crappy technology, and just wait for everybody to forget about it and move on.
But really, these guys had to, I mean, they, like Dave, I think is the guy with the fingers guy.
That's Jim Dags.
Jim.
There's a lot of Daves.
There were a lot of Daves, yeah.
There's 2 Daves and 3 Jims in the film.
So Jim, the fingers Jim, he was like, you know, I really had to, he had to make a decision. And another Dave said I think it was him who, you know, they were like, I was the only guy that was doing this. And I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to be a good business decision. And a lot of people did. They let them go because it was a business decision and it wasn't as efficient or effective of a method to print. But, and I think that it's amazing that Jim kept and held on to everything, because it's a lot of commitment space-wise and money-wise if you're running a business.
Right. I was kind of thinking about this today. I was making some social media stuff, and it's like, we live in a time where you have like the highest amount of technology in terms of like resolution, quality, you know what I mean? You can, you know, your iPhone can take a picture that could probably be put into like use in outdoor advertisement, like a bus shelter or something like that, you know, and a prosumer camera can capture an image that can be blown up to a billboard. And we're all putting all this effort into what we do to make it look really good and nice. But the end thing is like, our professional tools are like, yeah, but here's the preset. Like you go into Photoshop and it has the presets for Instagram, and we're shrinking it all down and everything. And I think that's the thing, is like, you can get by just shooting for Instagram or just designing for Instagram, and like, well, it doesn't matter if it's a little pixelated, or if I don't need those details because we're viewing it in this little screen. And I think that as a professional, you have that choice of like, am I going to still strive for more, or am I going to just do the minimum? And these guys that held on knew like, well, this technology is superior to the old way of doing things, creates a technically better product. So do I want to just produce something and slap it out and get it out the door and cash a check? Or do I want to keep being a craftsman? And that was the risk that these guys took. And it sort of paid off for them, because now this machinery is in vogue. Like a Vandercook that was like a proof press, that was something that they just had as like a side tool, you know, the way we might have an iPad or something now, is going for like $14,000. And so since they knew like, well, there's some quality here, I'm going to hang on to this stuff, it's sort of paid off for them. Yeah. And it's more interesting, whereas all that sort of transient technology, you know, is just gone.
Right. So Kent wants to ask Andrew if there were any big hot discussions between you and Aaron about what must stay and go. Did you guys duke it out at all?
I feel like, Kevin, do you remember anything?
Well, I'll tell you from a third-party perspective. So I think each Aaron and Andrew approached the film completely differently. You know, Andrew is more of a storyteller, and Aaron is more of an academic. I mean, she teaches letterpress. And so Aaron came into it just kind of, again, wanting to preserve that knowledge, to understand and to capture all of these things and to just put it out there. And I think at the beginning of the process, there was a lot of, okay, well, we have to get this person to be in the film because we're going to lose him and we're going to lose that knowledge, versus we need this person in the film because like that's the story and that's the direction that will carry it, you know, through the entire thing. And so there were a lot of sticky notes on the wall of who are we interviewing and, you know, who kind of says the repeat message and, you know, a little bit of that. And so there was a lot of that at the beginning. And then kind of as we got into editing, I think both Andrew and Aaron kind of met in this like nice middle ground, you know. So Aaron may have wanted to make it more factual and very, you know, matter of fact, the entire film, as to where we know that like to engage an audience for an hour and a half, like you have to tell a little bit of a story, you have to bring that emotional side, you have to have some natural pauses in the film to just let people enjoy the beauty of letterpress. And so kind of going that route and finding this marriage really worked well, but. Yeah, there were a little bit of okay, who's in this film, who's in that film, and that kind of stuff.
Right. And we all kind of had the four sort of like the main producers, Joe, Kevin, Aaron, and myself. Like we all kind of had this agreement that like we all get one thing that we're not gonna budge on. And I feel like I kind of got two. Maybe I got one for being the director, one for being the editor or something. But like the first thing that we see in the film and this reenactment, a lot of people were like, that's not like, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's not letterpress. People want to know that this is letterpress. And I was really adamant about.
But it was kind of a good opening.
Right.
It was a good scene setter for the story.
Right. And to me, it was like, well, this isn't strictly about letterpress. It's about how people, this theme, I mean, to me, the main theme of the film was, we do have a quote where he says it, but like, it's a symbiotic relationship. These old guys are keeping the technology alive by literally like greasing the cogs, and then it's keeping them alive by giving them purpose and something to keep doing. You know, they said that they're going to keep printing until retirement and beyond then. And like, if they didn't have something to focus on, what else would they do? You know, so that thing was important for me to show. But yeah, I think there was a lot of, like Kevin said, that balance, because we had two directors, it definitely helped, like to keep, because again, I would have went on like a really cynical like tangent about trade school or whatever, and Aaron would help like reel me back in.
So Kent has a question. He's kind of giving a insight. I know he's already seen the movie. What effect did the death of one of the principals have on the project?
Well, I mean, I'll kind of start that and then maybe let you chime in here, Andrew.
Yeah.
You know,
I just can't get past that Kevin looks like he's in witness protection. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
This is my maker room. We just, all kinds of, I'll give you the tour. Like, there's a disco ball. So, you know, we started the project again with that premise of, one, why has letterpress survived? You know, there's no reason for it. I can print with my printer and print something just a lot faster. With why has it survived? And then we're going to lose this knowledge. And that kind of led us down that same path. And so we started the project with that. And of course, you know, it goes through the back of your mind, well, these guys are getting older and, you know, the idea is to capture it. But of course, you never wish that you'll have a principal, you know, pass away in the middle of filming. And so that was a challenge for us. I mean, we had to kind of rely on stuff we had already captured. We couldn't necessarily go back and oh, we got to get this line from him here. But I think it also presented a challenge and an opportunity. And so this whole time we are exploring this story about, what does happen to all of your materials, your type, your presses, your ink, your papers, your cabinets, and some of it can just amass. And when you see the film, you'll understand that the person that passed away, he had a massive collection of stuff. And so what happens to that after, who is left with it and who deals with it? And so that's kind of the path that we went down a little bit. So while it was unfortunate, it did provide an additional story opportunity that we could explore.
Yeah.
So we're like almost at the end of the time, but I kind of want to get into a little bit of the marketing if you guys have like another 10 minutes to give me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Andrew, what have you done to go about marketing the movie, and what kind of doors have you had to knock to get some of the venues that you want to be a part of? How much does who play into that kind of getting your foot in the right door, especially with something like Netflix?
Yeah, I mean the whole marketing. Sorry, I just shared this thing I was looking up. This is from the edit. That's the whole movie in one timeline. So in Premiere, that's the whole hour and a half, like clip by clip. All the green stuff at the bottom is sound, and all the stuff above is video. So that's kind of the what it looks like in the end, all in one place. Anyway, the marketing, that's a big part of it. I mean, Bayonet is sort of like a marketing agency. A lot of we're pretty well versed in that. So that for me as a business owner, like we want to keep making original content like this. We don't only want to make TV ads. We don't only want to make like videos of CEOs telling all the people at their company what's the quarterly update, right? So it has to make money. It has to make money so that we can pay our staff and hopefully do another one. So the Kickstarter was a huge marketing endeavor. I mean, that was like just as much effort as we went through to make the film. That much effort went into doing the Kickstarter. There's a ton of content. There's the trailer. There's like a behind the scenes thing with Aaron. There's all the stuff like the stuff where we have the Daves making fun of Defont.com, the Daves sharing stuff from their collection, and just on Instagram and everything. I mean, it's a huge effort, and it's kind of fun though to take all these like little pieces from the film or things that we didn't use. I've started we've got a thing where Pete took us on a tour of his shop with a GoPro. We just gave him a GoPro, and he's rocking around with a selfie stick, this is that and the other and everything. So that will probably make it out there at some point. We did a whole behind the scenes video of making our credits. That's on the DVD because we actually letterpress printed the credits and then scanned them in. So it's like letterpress and stop motion, which is two most tedious forms of things coming together. Talk about analog on analog. But it made for a cool effect. So anyway, all that to say, we're still trying to keep building our audience. We want to reach as big of an audience as possible. One of our major goals was to get it onto Netflix. We're about to screen at Adobe's home office, Google, and Facebook, and then even we got invited to screen at Yeti Coolers, which is cool. They're a fun new brand. But all of this to try and gain some attention and get it out there where people have seen it, and then hopefully we can to give us some credibility to come back to someone and say, well, we made that documentary and now we want to make one about something else, and try and bring our perspective and our voice to some other subject.
Cool. All right. So you're doing showings. Kevin, can you kind of take us through that? Yeah. And so how would somebody go about if they wanted you to come to their, I know Abby wants you to come to Kansas City, Missouri. How does she go about doing that?
Awesome. So we are in kind of our screening mode right now, and we'll be doing that for probably the next year or two. But before it's released, we're only screening across the country, and we want to come to your hometown, like you just said. I think there's a screening happening or in the works for Kansas City. But regardless, we want you to go to our website, letterpressfilm.com, and click on screenings. from here, you can click the giant square that says request a screening. And you'll see we already have a couple booked right now. And there are more that are being booked and should be added. So from there, you can just fill out a small form and we'll get in touch with you. But there is no limit to screening. Sometimes with filmmakers, me, Andrew, Aaron, or Joe, we'll come out, we'll do a Q&A, and you'll see on that webpage that it says Filmmaker Q&A. And so we'll be there to kind of intro the film and answer questions after and just kind of, explore the topic a little more in-depthly. So letterpressfilm.com, I think it's /screenings, but just click on the request a screening button on the screenings page.
So it's letterpressfilm.com for everybody who's listening in iTunes /screening-requests with an S on the end of requests. So it's in there. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. And part of it too is you might be, as an individual, obviously you probably don't have access to a theater. But once we get enough, we're trying to just find people to be connected with. Exactly. Someone was here for AIGA. We've been trying to put together a AIGA national to sponsor something in every city where their chapters are, and hopefully the members could come at a discounted rate or something like that. And we're still just looking to be introduced to anybody who has some decision-making power to get us there.
Exactly. So whether you're a grassroots organizer, whether you are a decider and you run a venue, whether you're that member, a board member, or whoever of an organization, we're really trying to work with everyone and just kind of bring the film and really spread the letterpress love as much as we can. So Joe says you might know some people.
Right. Or even a university, right? Because Kent is a professor and I'm a professor, Anne's a professor. So some of those things those are great places to show this film as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Universities, companies, their internal design groups. And, some people are doing internal for their company only. Some people are doing open to the public or only for our students in this program. We think it really fits in well with a lot of graphic design programs out there. Especially a lot of the callbacks like we were talking about earlier where all these terms, but where did they come from? And how are you using them today? We definitely want to bring the film to your hometown and screen.
Cool. All right. So I just want to share. So for everybody to be able to get in touch with you, if they, have an idea for a film or they want to pitch something to you or just want to know what you're doing next, they should really go to bayonetmedia.com, or what should they do? How should they get in touch with you?
Yeah, Bayonet's the best way to get involved, in touch with Kevin and I, or anything to do with commercial production, or just if you want to have a documentary produced or a short film or something like that. We're totally open to that. We've had a lot of people come to us with ideas. And then the film, everything about the film is over on, letterpressfilm.com. Instagram is where we're updating the most. That's where just our audience has been biggest.
And that's at Letterpress Film. And so just so that everybody knows, so bayonet, the things you stab somebody with, right? So if you want to follow them and figure out what they're doing next, what their next documentary will be, it might be about yo-yos, remember, if you're a big yo-yo person, but it's bayonetmedia.com.
But bayonet in a friendly way. We really embrace the color pink. So you'll see our website right here, but we just recently relaunched it, and it's got a lot of slow motion stuff, and we're starting to get into original content as well. So check us out, but also check out the film's website.
Absolutely. And that again, letterpressfilm.com. So thanks guys so much. I'm so glad that I got to talk to you both and have you on the show. And thank you guys for all coming. And next week it's a rapid recharge. I'm going to be recapping some stuff from this past year, as well as talking about a new side project I'm working on. So hopefully it'll be something you're interested in. Hopefully you'll show up next week, normal time, 2:30 Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on Wednesday. So the 27th, 28th, I'm really bad with math. So 7 days from today.
After asking about the discount code that Kevin promised.
All right.
There you go.
So
Print Lives On is the discount code.
All caps.
Buy a poster. We have awesome T-shirts on our website that say Print Lives On, and they've got a picture of a press behind them. I think Diane, you got a poster behind you hanging on her wall. So we did our job somewhere. But that poster is actually really cool. It's 5 layers, letterpress print designed by Brad Vetter and Aaron Beckloff.
Cool.
I'm really enjoying the screen share thing, so I'm just.
It is. It's cool, huh?
It's very cool.
So what's the 918? Is that the Type High?
Yeah, that's Type High. And one of the guys that we interviewed actually had made, Rick Von Holt made this shirt, and he's wearing it in the film, .918, and he had the type and he printed on a shirt but ruined all of his type in the process. So these are all screen printed. No type was hurt in the process of making them. And apparently it's also Tulsa's area code. We had somewhere wearing and people are like, oh, Tulsa. And we're like, no, maybe.
Yeah. That's great. That's hilarious. But there is lots of great things. And you can get the pack. So there's a packet that you can get, which you get the DVD or the digital download, which the digital download will be sent to us, I guess, in an email in October.
Yeah, it'll be around October, probably. We don't have a specific date on that, but it will be this fall.
You do really like the screen share.
We're visual thinkers here. We all love visual aid.
It is really nice. So, well, guys, thank you so much. And I just want to make sure everybody knows how they can get in touch with me. Also, you can always email me if you have a question or you just want to chat, you're lonely. I will try to email you back that day. It's Diane@rechargingyou.com. And you can also find me on Instagram or Twitter @DesignRecharge. So I hope that you guys will connect with me if I haven't already. Hey there, I was like, why is he taking his shirt off? This is a little awkward. We're still seeing you, Kevin.
My .918 shirt.
I'm glad. I was like, wait, we're not done. What are you doing taking your clothes off? I told you it was G-rated. So the discount code is Print Lives On. What happened was Kevin had it on all, here, let me do this, all panelists and people. It's okay. It's just you have to change that blue thing to say all panelists and attendees. Sorry, there it is twice. Yeah, Joe says it's Design Recharge After Dark. All right, so I'm gonna. We have a tornado warning watch, whatever's the not bad one. We have that till 7 p.m. today. So I'm going to let you guys go and try to brave this little hurricane or tropical storm, Cindy, and I will see you guys next week. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Diane.
Y'all were awesome.
So much. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Brandon said good luck with your film. So
thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. Everyone take care.
And everyone else, thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. See you next week. Oops. I have to hit stop record. And I'm like